Hey guys, Downey here.
Okay, what the hell is this? I just boot up my PC and I noticed that it's almost 2021 and then Flash is gonna be dead. You know, Flash, if you're like 12, now I'll just give you a run up here. Flash was a multimedia program used to play videos, audio and games back in the old days of the internet and browsers. In all honesty, it got a lot done with its games. Even stuff like Super Meat Boy wouldn't be around as we know it today without Flash. So many indie game devs got their start creating Flash games, not for profit or as a business, but just because it's fun. I'd spend hours a day when it was raining, not on my Wii or my PlayStation, but glued to a shit laptop playing games on ArmorGames.com and having the absolute time of my life. So before that goes away for good, I'll be looking back at as many as I can, I'll give them a review and then a score out of 10. I want to walk down memory lane here with you guys, and in this video I'll mostly be focusing on the independent games. So I won't be covering huge things like Club Penguin or Bin Weevils because as a kid I didn't play them and also most of them are shut down forever anyway. Also I won't be covering big official games because old sites like Cartoon Network used to host their official Flash games, but I think that would be unfair to compare them to independent games usually made by one or two guys. Well, onto the video. Okay, so where to start on the library this massive of games we need to get through quickly? We need something iconic and simple to get the ball rolling. Achievement Unlocked is a simple game you can beat in about 10 minutes. You're a funny little elephant in a room with one simple objective. Get all 100 achievements. But the achievements can go from pressing the right button to typing the programmer's username on your keyboard. It's not very hard, it only took me like 8 minutes to beat it, but I had a ton of fun trying to guess what the names of the achievements meant in order to get the achievement itself. Because I can't lie, some of them were quite tricky. Plus, there were much larger sequel games made, 3 in particular being really well made. However, for some reason my PC just couldn't run it. I even ran the browser through Opera GX, the quote-unquote gamers browser, but it still wouldn't work. Anyway, if you guys want to give it a go, I'd give it an easy 10 out of 10. This is the only level was made by the same guy as Achievement Unlocked. It's a similar game and he really loves his elephants. In this game you only have one level to do, you just go up, hit the button and leave. But every time you do this, the win condition changes. Sometimes the screen's really zoomed in, sometimes the lights flick off. It's a pretty fun 10-minute puzzle platformer, and it's simple fun. The controls aren't complex, it's just a little 10-minute thing and you're done. I feel this is the way that most games should be done to an extent. Short, get whatever you want to do done, and then the game's over. I also love the idea of doing the same level 30 times with a new gimmick introduced, like having to reload the web page to unlock the door. I'd give it a 9 out of 10. It's pretty solid. Have you ever been so fed up with not only industrial society, but the entire process of evolution and having to live on land you want to return to the ocean? The Miami and Sydney Shark games may be for you. These games are arcade classics on the Flash engine. You're a shark on a rampage, destroying anything and everything you can get in your teeth into in a short run. I fondly remember playing these games when it was raining back in primary school. We'd all crowd up over a laptop and take turns for high score. Leaping up, grabbing jumbo jets and pulling them back to the water, it's a great time that I'd recommend to anyone who wants a brief taste of what the Flash engine is all about. It was also made with a great deal of heart. That one shark PNG that flashes up when you bite always makes me chuckle. It's a great time, and over Discord with your mates, if you want a good competition with them, I'd really recommend giving this game a go. I'd give this game a solid 8.5 out of 10. Raft Wars is a seriously classic Flash games. It's one of the first ones I remember playing, and it's a pretty simple game. You and your mate are on a raft and you have to shoot the other people to get past. Aiming can feel very awkward at times, especially when you max out the ship and you're all at different angles to shoot from. After each shot, you're given the grace of the game's fantastic voice acting and its incredibly dated reference for idle animations. Look, you guys know I'm just goofing here, but there's one thing that I do not like about the game at all. The characters are all weird shades of green, beige and sickly yellows. Another issue going against the game is the fact that once you hit an enemy they'll just return to where they were, so you can just hold your mouse still between shots. But despite your unfairness, you reach a section where the enemies are shooting explosives at you, and if they hit you that's 100 damage and an instant death, which feels really cheap. Either way, this Grandad game is a serious classic of the Flash library, and despite its holdups, I'd say it's fondly remembered. 6 out of 10. Here I was going to do a segment on the Fancy Pants adventure games, but then I found this. They're safe from the Flash apocalypse. They recently had a whole new game put on Steam, which I never even heard of until I was doing some research for this video. Since when does a Flash game so fantastic and popular get a full release game that just gets no traction? I'm just in shock. The reviews seem good on Steam, and while I've not had a chance to play this myself, I feel pretty confident in recommending this one. These games were ridiculously polished compared to many other 2D platformers on Flash. This silly little series that you could play for free on your browser felt more polished than some AAA platformer games. I love me my 2D platformers, and this is no exception. The Flash games were an easy 10 out of 10, so I have no doubt in my mind that recommending the Steam game is a good call. Another incredibly well animated Stickman game I'd recommend to you guys is Mike Shadow. I paid for it. You play as a really well made Stickman beating the shit out of a vending machine for not giving him his Euro Shopper drink. However, the real fun in this game comes from how fantastically animated everything looks. Every attack animation is smooth, weighty, and they're just a joy to unlock through. And the game's quick progression system leads to snowballing in huge amounts of cash. The more you beat up the vending machine, the more money you get, the more upgrades you can get. It all pays for itself. Every run has a timer built in, your patience, which passively goes down and you spend it to use moves. Once you use any move, there's a slight cooldown, so I'd recommend having 2 or 3 cheap low cooldown moves on your bar just in case you have some extra patience at the end of a run. Once you finish kicking the shit out of a vending machine enough in a run, you get extra special moves. You can get out a Gatling gun, call in a cavalry charge, or even Kamehameha it in space. It's a very fun game. So as a wrap up, it's just a pretty fun game that I'd recommend to you guys if you just want to spend an afternoon goofing off with it. I'd highly recommend it. 10 out of 10. The second example of a Flash game getting so popular it allows them to escape browsers and go more professional is the Epic Battle Fantasy series. I'd played some of these from time to time as a kid, but being a stupid child, I could never get very far in them. The deepest understanding of RPG combat at the time was grinding your starter Pokemon to level 100 and sweeping the game, so I didn't actually know how to think in combat. But I found the colours nice, the characters looked cool, and I enjoyed them. Recently I found out that a lot of them were updated and put on Steam, so if you want a full-on RPG game filled with the most early 2000s internet crap you can imagine, go right ahead. Even the trailer alone is making me nostalgic for more simple internet time. 7.5 out of 10 from what I remember playing. Drop Dead 2 is a weird game, but I had a ton of fun with it as a kid and I enjoyed replaying it for this video. It's an interesting game. You're given a teddy bear and your goal is to pull him or the environment around him around to hurt him as much as possible without killing him. And I don't get why, this concept is very edgy, but hear me out, I find it fun. The whole idea of starting the game with only 2 pushes, but the more points you get across all levels permanently unlocks more pushes for retries, really encourages a high amount of replayability to every level. For another replayability centric mechanic, the more points you get you can unlock extra characters, but none of them are worth it, they all suck. Herbert the wacky default bear is the only thing you'll ever need. Also, I don't know man, I just love a game that owns up to how weird it is by having the final world just be called wacky and an option to turn on or off pig heads on the main menu. 8 out of 10 for Drop Dead 2 though, I find it a lot of fun. Death vs Monsters is a fun, fast, simple bullet hell game. You use your mouse to avoid enemies and their attacks and you shoot non-stop in a straight line, so you have to manually rotate yourself to aim. It's really fun, visuals are incredible by Flash game standards, and the music is also surprisingly good. After every level you buy upgrades to either your gun or passive abilities like your health and your special move. An easy to grasp progression system like this really encourages the player to keep moving on. My one issue is that compared to the rest of the game, the final boss feels like total BS. It's not the hardest thing you'll ever beat, but it's such a huge spike in difficulty compared to the rest of the game that it can feel a bit cheap. If you want 20 minutes of bullet hell action, satisfying progression, and if you're up to it, a challenging final boss, it's a pretty good time. 8.5 out of 10. Boombot is a really fun puzzle platformer, in a way. You have an indestructible robot you need to get to a door to end the level, but the only way you have to move him are explosions you can create around the stage. Wherever you click, you can create a bomb. You have a limited amount for each level. There are a lot of objects like bouncy walls, oil drums that explode on their own after a while, and other stuff, but that's just the gist of the game. It's okay, and everything I've just described is basically the whole game. Some levels are a bit confusing and unfair because there are some elements of RNG in how levels go, but it's nothing that hinders it from being a fun puzzle game that won't take up too much of your time. 7 out of 10. Causality is a very edgy, very tough series of puzzle games. You're given a scenario like an office, a kitchen, an oil rig, and you have to kill every stickman on site by interacting with the world with only one condition. A stickman cannot see another dead body. They're really hard and sometimes stupidly confusing because the choices of things to interact with don't make sense at all. Yeah mate, if I turn on the fridge, this dude on the other side of the room will freeze. Cheers. But on the other hand, there's a great deal of satisfaction in piecing together one of these and carrying out a perfect run. Plus, I can't lie, the stickman animation on display here is fluid. Every kill has some degree of weight to it, which I appreciate. There's a ton of these games, and there's also a different series which is the same called Click Death, and it'll be a huge loss that they're all gone in a month or so. So I'm giving it a 6.5 out of 10. If you want more stickmen with a lot less edge, I'd really give the Stickmin series a go. Come on, they had a collection out on Steam, no excuse now while they're free on your browser. These games are like those crap Goosebumps choose your own adventure books you read as a kid, but in all honesty it just functions so much better as a game, and it's almost entirely due to the visual aid of your decision making. The series all started with the now laughably bad Breaking the Bank, which is just an animation where you have 4 options, one of them win, the other 3 loses. This began a huge series, breaking the jail, stealing the diamond, it just gets crazier from there. Now there's a game on Steam with touched up animations recompiling all the games alongside a new entry to end the series off on, with something like a grand total of 400 total options to choose from across all games. Yeah, I'd say it's a really great series, especially now the first 3 or so games have been completely remade. I loved this series as a kid, and now that it's on Steam, the second it goes on Christmas sale, I'm buying it. 10 out of 10, easily. Bloons is a pretty big series now, but its humble beginnings are a simple flash game about a monkey throwing darts at balloons. Easy puzzle game with a simple but great premise. Some levels have gimmicks, you have to break some cardboard with your darts to get at the balloons, some walls are bouncy so you need to ricochet your shots, pop certain balloons to get special ability like throwing 3 darts at once, some of them are even detrimental like the ice balloons freezing around themselves so that they can't be popped. It's a simple, fun, easy game that spawned a huge host of sequels and a certain spin-off series, which we'll get to later, don't worry, and to see such humble beginnings from a series is such a cool thing to appreciate. I'd give it a 6 out of 10. Meeblings is a much more creative idea from Ninja Kiwi for a puzzle game. You have to get these Meebling oval characters to the end sign using their unique powers to get them there. Yellow ones pull all Meeblings on the screen towards them, blue ones push, pink flip gravity. All in all, it's a really fun idea for a game, and it's a shame that nothing's been done with it since. The game does have an issue with some levels not really being puzzles, just mash, push and go while you're stuck on fans until you either go insane or win. But it's a really fun idea, and it's a shame that it never caught on. There was a sequel, and I definitely remember installing an iOS port at one time, but it seems like the iOS port died years ago, and well, the Flash game is on its last legs, so that's a huge loss to me. I'd give Meeblings though an 8 out of 10. Hot Corn was another game I remember really well. It's a simple mouse only game where you only have a few seconds to move a ball of fire around the stage to pop a certain amount of popcorn. I think the idea is good, and while a game like this would work really well on mobile today, the precision the mouse allows you to operate with is really important due to how small the kernels are. And to add to that, there are some cool objects to interact with, like petrol cans that blow up and being able to turn into ice to move through blue areas. I think it's pretty fun. The one issue is that the ball's control can be a bit weird at times for some reason, especially on the more precision focused levels. Also, some levels feel like they just have a bit too short of a timer for the stuff it wants you to pull off. But other than that, I'd give it a go if it sounds fun to you guys. 6 out of 10. Bombastic is an illusion of a puzzle game which is more akin to gambling. I don't even know why I liked this game as a kid, man. It stinks. You can use a candle or a bomb every level, and you try and blow up a target number of bombs in each stage. Sort of like trying to cause a chain reaction across the stage. It sounds pretty good, on paper, you know? Starting one small explosion and watching it snowball into a huge chain reaction would be really satisfying. Where this game completely shits the bed is the fact that so much of it is RNG dependent. The bombs don't even walk in a set pattern, their movement is random. And then, oh boy, then there are the robot bomb levels. These require you to blow up every single robot bomb on the stage alongside the set number of bombs, but they can just walk away from all the actioners at any point. And then there are some levels with pink bombs that you can't blow up, one, or else you lose, full stop. Plus, the game's menus are filled with typos and there's a load of glitches in the game. It just stinks. I'm giving it a 2 out of 10. It's awful. Now, when I mentioned balloons earlier, some monkey throwing darts in a crap puzzle game wasn't what came to your mind, was it? I'd say it was more akin to a very catchy bass line. I'll just give it a little play now and see if I can jog your memories for a bit. Bloons Tower Defense was the absolute king of Flash games for a good while, especially the incredibly saturated tower defense genre. I mean, how could it not be? It's simple, effective, fun. You buy up monkey towers to protect you from balloons, you spend money upgrading these towers to make them big, strong monkey boys, and then you build up even more until you win the level. Some balloons need special troops. Lead balloons, you need a cannon. Camo balloons, something they'll be able to spot them. It's simple fun. How could any kid not find this so? Hell, I even had the 5th game installed on my iPad so I could play it when we were on caravan trips without Wi-Fi. Yeah, I know that this one escaped Flash dying, but come on now, it's Bloons. It's so synonymous with Flash, it would be a crime not to put it here. Seriously, if you were a kid in the early 2000s and you didn't play at least one of these, like, that's it man, we can never be friends. 10 out of 10, easily. But despite the quality and amount of content in the Bloons Tower Defense series, it wasn't my favourite of the oversaturated tower defense games, not by a long shot, because one man made it his mission to recreate the Pokemon series as a tower defense game. Pokemon Tower Defense, creative name I know, is an entire trilogy of games recreating the Pokemon series with a new unique story in a tower defense format. The story I can't comment on the quality of because I just skip all the cutscenes and dialogue. The games are really fun, I can't lie. Sure, there are a few unfair difficulty spikes here and there, and for some areas it's not really how good you are at the game, but what Pokemon you catch and how willing you are to grind things out with them. But all in all, while recording for this video I sunk hours into it, and back in 2010 to 2012 I sunk even more time into it. The game does have some glaring issues in particular. In the first game, some of the stages are far too zoomed out or zoomed in without any good middle ground options available. In the sequel game, there are huge issues with grinding being necessary for progression. And the entire idea of tanky defensive Pokemon are just crap in these games. You really just focus on raw DPS with some people relegated to statusing and not much else. Also, on some good news, it seems the dev is trying to move the engine on something else so that it lives past 2020. I'd give these a 9 to 10 out of 10 any day. If you want something shorter and simple, there's a huge selection of puzzle games from two very different series, in concept but very similar in execution. Let's start with Monkey Go Happy, a series of puzzle games with like 40 entries or something ridiculous like that. Every level has a simple concept: do something to make the little crying monkey happy, be it shooting stuff in an arcade game to win a prize or collect some mushrooms for him. It's just silly stuff that you can play if you have 5 minutes to kill and nothing else better to do. And I can't lie, making the monkey happy is very cute. On the other hand, there's Trollface Quest, another series of games. I think there's like 15 or so, there's too many. Where the solution to the puzzle is always something zany, everything has a thick layer of rage comics on it. It's something that a kid addicted to 2008 era memes like myself had way more fun with than I should have. I mean, they are fun puzzles, and trying to find what the answer is can be funny. But compared to a much more simple game like Monkey Go Happy, it can just feel like it comes a bit short. Either way, both these games are some semblance of a good time, and I'd recommend them either way. 6 out of 10 for Monkey Go Happy and 5 out of 10 for Trollface Quest. Gibbets is a weird game. Dudes being hanged around the stage and you have a bow and arrow to get them down. I really like the aspect of this being a puzzle game with a clear time limit. You need to get these people down before they suffocate. I also love how missing the rope means hitting them, which can cut down your timer a great deal. It's a really cool idea in my opinion to have a puzzle game based around precision while you're on a harsh timer, especially with some levels having a strict amount of hours you can use. The game can also be really tough at stages, but that's just how some Flash games increase their playtime. The music and art design really aren't the best, but I'd give this game an easy 6. Did you guys ever play those games about being a fish where you have to grow bigger to avoid being eaten by bigger fish until you become the apex predator? Tasty Planet is that whole idea of a game pushed to its absolute limit. You play as this little grey blob created to be a sentient Roomba eating dust, but they forget to make it not grow, so throughout the whole game you go from eating dust particles, growing big enough to take on bacteria, up until you grow large enough to eat the entire solar system. It's a 15 to 20 minute game that's good fun up until the last level, which just stinks in space. The controls suddenly become way too awkward and slippy, compounded by the fact that you're not given much indication on what you can and can't eat. There were several times in the last level where I was bigger than something, but going into it would just kill me. It's harmless fun nonetheless, and up until then it's a pretty good time, so I give it a 5.5 out of 10. Doodle God is a great idea for a puzzle game, and a game I over the years have tried several times to complete. But it's just so boring. You start off with 4 basic elements and have to put these together in differing ways to mix and match to create new stuff up. Water and fire makes steam, fire and sand makes glass. But it's just so boring. The fact that all you get for creating something new is a new JPEG to mix and match with isn't a reward, and unless you're insane to do this for hours to quote-unquote beat the game, all you get is the satisfaction of having done so, brainlessly mashing PNGs together until every combination's been made. Plus, there's so much stuff that makes no sense. You create this vague, abstract idea of energy, as well as being able to create stuff like a steam engine before coming up with a single living creature. To an extent, I appreciate the freedom this game gives you in creating stuff in any order you want. You're given 4 elements and no other direction until you finish all 150 total or so. It's not worth it at all. But, if it sounds like your thing, go ahead. 3 out of 10. Learn to Fly is one of my favourite games I played while replaying stuff for this video. You play as a penguin testing out flying mechanisms and trying to go as far as possible, earning cash each try from how far you go, top altitude, or even your destruction of obstacles. I feel Learn to Fly succeeds in 3 major ways. The first of which is that every upgrade genuinely feels meaningful and important. Spending however much to get a faster start or a new glider always feels like it plays a role in the next run. While I was playing every time I upgraded something, the run after I'd unlocked some form of new top score. Secondly, there are a lot of options given. You don't want to use a glider, you can use a balloon or something else that focuses more on altitude rather than speed. You don't want to use an engine for propulsion? Invest in a rocket for a one-time huge boost. These options do open up a load of new playstyles for the player, which I feel is important in this game. Then there's the third aspect of the game I love. The fact that progression feels so fast. There's no need to farm or grind anything over and over again to get upgrades. I was consistently able to upgrading something new every run or two, meaning that compared to other games with upgrades, Learn to Fly was at a breakneck pace. Partner this with milestones for the player to achieve by destroying new obstacles, going from a snowman up to a pile of snow, then a mountain, then an iceberg, and the icing on the cake is that you have an interactive soundtrack that picks up in intensity the faster you go, and this is going to be the biggest loss of Flash shutting down, or at least one of them. 10 out of 10 easily. For something more action oriented, there's bubble tanks. You start off as this shitey little tank exploring around large bubbles that count as kind of arenas where you fight other tanks. But then the more tanks you blow up, you begin to notice you pick up parts of them, and your tank physically begins to grow. And then, once the bottom gauge is filled up, you upgrade yourself. You choose an upgrade path, typically between weaker but more evasive tanks or larger big boys with the big boy firearms. 3, 2, 1. These upgrades also give you extra moves, like doing a huge AoE spread of shots or a shield, so that's an extra avenue of customization and replayability. The game itself is 15 to 10 minutes long. To beat the game, you reach the maximum size and you keep going right, and eventually the final boss will just show up and say hi. From there, it's not a very tough boss, but it's fun nonetheless. I love how your progression isn't based on kills or doing level, but it's based on how big your tank gets, and if you get hit you lose more bubbles you have. So the game is purely dictated by the player's own skill to progress, so I'd give it a 7.5 out of 10. It's a good time. If you want one of the best made Flash games that's an absolute staple, I'd recommend Haunt the House. It's a simple 20-minute game with only arrow key controls and some other buttons. You're a ghost who doesn't want to put up with other people in your house, but now there's a party going on, so you're gonna have to get them out. It's a pretty fun concept and a really fun game. You just have to move around the place as this really cute ghost, possessed objects, and try and spook people to get them out. The more people witness paranormal things, the tenser the mood gets and the more you can do to spook them. In the beginning, the best you can do is move a painting around a little bit, but then you can make Mike TV from Willy Wonka full out of it. It's really creative, well animated, and it's a good time. And the music's also pretty good too. Yeah, nods to this. The only real flaw I can think of is that the end game does suck. You reach a point where getting people out of the house isn't fun or interesting anymore and it's just a chore. Mostly because it requires scaring people just a bit too much to make them leave. especially when the AI makes someone running, kicking and screaming to the door to go upstairs and into the attic, before jumping out the 3rd-story window in fear, killing themselves. Then there's the big issue of the progression at some points being way too quick. I love the idea of setting the mood and somehow making it tenser over time, but within 3 minutes of playtime it's already maxed out. But other than that, Haunt the House is a great time and I'd easily give it a 9 to 10 out of 10. It's just good fun and I'd recommend it to you guys. Kids vs Ice Cream was one of the first games I wanted to find when I had the idea for this video. I remembered thinking as a kid that it was a great time. You drive an ice cream truck while psychotic kids run you down and do everything in their power to destroy your truck, so you shoot ice cream at them until they stop. Pretty fun and pretty simple idea. You aim with the mouse, click to shoot and win the level. But there are some fundamental issues here that just cripple the game completely and made me really not enjoy it. First off, don't make me click individually for every shot I fire, just make it automatic. I can't be bothered to smash my mouse this hard over some stupid Flash game. And this issue is made tenfold worse by the fact that the kids have way too much HP. To compound this again, there's another issue. If you button mash too much, the ice cream van overheats. This game wants you to button mash, but then punishes you for doing exactly that. So while you're cooling down, you may just think, oh well, it's the end level, I'll just heal up for the next one. No, sir, it's much worse than that. You have to heal using money you could be spending on upgrades on the upgrade screen. But if you go to the upgrade screen, you get put back to the main menu without a level select option. You're stranded here and the only way to unlock your level select option every time is to beat the level you just did again. This game is a hot mess with some issues I'm just shocked weren't fixed while in development. The art and the music are very clearly competently made, but everything else is just a hot mess. I'm giving it a 2.5 out of 10. If you want something more relaxing, then there's the Papa's Flash games. There's 10 of them and I just chose the Pizzeria one for this video. I mean, they're all really similar, so it doesn't really matter. These games are propaganda created by McDonald's, Burger King, Papa John's and Subway in a combined effort to convince people that working within the fast food sector isn't a living nightmare, comparable only to the eternity of hell Sisyphus was forced to endure. The games are all really simple and really easy. It's just memory and simple multitasking. The one challenge that comes up every now and then is that the receipt on the side of your screen dictates who the order is for. So you may be making someone else's pizza on the side while waiting for a big one to cook. You need to pay attention that everyone's getting the right order. The main layer of challenge within this game is making sure that everyone's ingredients are on the right place, because, you know, just cooking it wasn't seen as gameplay enough. Then to top it off, the absolute maniac customers you pull in actually want their pizzas to be cut individually in weird ways. Some sicko wants it in 6 oddly sized slices. Every shift really isn't long, but the games can be repetitive at times. If you want something fun to just kill half an hour one afternoon, just boot one of these up, whichever, it doesn't really matter. They're not and they never will be a favourite, but they're just pleasant and simple games. I give them a 6.5 out of 10. Fireboy and Lava Girl is a 2-player puzzle platformer, and no, it's not a spin-off based on Robert Rodriguez's cinematic masterpiece, Shark Boy and Lava Girl. This game is also part of a series where there's like 5. You play as Fireboy and Lava Girl using WASD and the other using arrow keys in order to traverse the level. You have some puzzles you need to work on together, and every level can only be beaten by getting both of them to an endpoint. The way the game handles obstacles is pretty cool too. Fireboy can't go through water and Water Girl can't go through lava, so you need to split them up to activate several levers to get through the game. The game was clearly designed to play as local co-op, which my brother and I used to love as a kid. This also leads to the fact that if one of you isn't as good as the other, you can be stuck with the game for a while. I guess this is just the big issue with co-op games as a genre. There is one issue though. A couple of times I couldn't beat a level because the ceilings were too low for me to jump and the game's UI would get in the way of a platform. I mean, for Flash there was literally no quality control of what could or couldn't be put out, so stuff like this is to be expected, but come on guys. I'd recommend this one only if you have someone to play locally or want to play co-op with you, because it's just too awkward a game to play alone. Having to do every platforming segment twice in order to make progress just isn't fun. 5 out of 10 if you play them alone, 6 out of 10 if you play it co-op. Crush the Castle is a simple game. You have a trebuchet and some options for what you shoot and you have to destroy a castle. You take shots at it until you destroy it or you're out of shots. It's a really simple arcade game. Now, I know this sounds familiar, but this game actually predates Angry Birds, which I find incredible. Like, Angry Birds is this huge series of like 20 games was spawned by an idea from some dumb Flash game. It was only compounded with a full-on interview with the devs of Crush the Castle asking if they feel Angry Birds ripped them off. I just love how much of a playground for ideas Flash was. Anyway, back on topic for Crush the Castle. I played the sequel for this video, and when I started just to get 5 minutes of footage, I couldn't stop until I'd beaten the whole game. It's really fun. Imagine Angry Birds gameplay, but instead of shooting and aiming a slingshot, you have to time on a trebuchet, let's go. What you shoot is completely down to you, it's your choice every level. But this does lead to a lot of situations when you're given a straight upgrade to something. So you have the choice between one small log or 3 hunks of metal, and it's pretty obvious there. And then a few levels later you get access to firing 3 bombs at once. Really, the only projectiles that matter what you use are the final ones, which are meant for more accuracy-based gameplay and hitting certain things. You need to snipe out a piece of wood with fire or hit metal with electricity. I beat the whole game in about 30 minutes and I had a ton of fun. Plus, there are a load of user-created levels to try out once you beat the game, so why not give it a go? If you like Angry Birds, I'd pay some tribute to what spawned it before it goes away. 8 out of 10 easily. Age of 4 is a civilization game for 8-year-olds who can't get their heads around even the most smooth brain of strategy games, which is why I absolutely loved this game as a kid. You're stuck in a forever war against your opponent and the only way to win is to kill them. You start off in the prehistoric era and slowly work your way up. I say slowly, but I'll get to that later. The game ends whenever you win, which depending on how aggressive you are and how well you play can be very quick or 20 minutes. You spend gold to place units, buy turrets, or to upgrade certain unit types. Honestly, I'd say to watch out in the early game, just because the fact that the AI has such an advantage over you. You're best off just rushing to the next era, Egyptian. The big issue in this game is that so much stuff is just skipped. You go from Egypt to the medieval period, then from the medieval period to the Renaissance, and then to modern day, and then into stupid alien stuff. This is goofy. You can also spend a chunk of your XP instead of upgrading era to put a bunch of damage on the field. The AI loves to spam this, so if they are using it, just don't put anything on the field for a few seconds and you'll be alright. The music is alright, but hearing it repeat for up to 20 minutes on end is annoying. Also, the art's a mix. Nothing spectacular. Some troops look okay, some look really ugly. Really, the biggest drawback and missed opportunity is the total lack of strategy. You put down a tank and some ranged stuff behind it, you're set. Age of 4 is okay, and while as a kid I thought it was fun, now looking back and replaying it, it's just a bit crap. You know, you can play it, don't get me wrong, and it is a bit of fun, but it's nothing really worth caring about. It's a perfect 5 out of 10. Duck Life is a eugenics simulator, and it's a huge empire of pretty cute games. I played the first game because when I input Duck Game in a search bar, I saw this. Also, some good news, there are 5 or so Steam games of Duck Game on Steam. Yep, it's another safe series. I'm always really pleasantly surprised when I see one of these games on Steam and is safe from the upcoming death of Flash. Anyway, Duck Life starts this really cute, charming cutscene and then you're in your game. You need your duck to be in tip-top condition to race, so you need to do shitty minigames to train him. The flying minigame is barely even a game, you have no control of how far the duck goes, you just click go, he'll fly and you can move him to collect coins. Every time you do this quote-unquote game, he'll just move a bit farther. You're improving, but it's literally not got anything to do with you or your input. Swimming is my favourite one. You just swim in a straight line and you have to duck or jump over 10 different obstacles. Sure, you go faster as time goes on, but really that's just it. Then for running, your duck will just run in a straight line while you have to click to jump when anything rolling approaches. Then there's your final stat, energy. Go to Sneed, Feed and Seed to increase the stat number. Then it's time for this, the race. Oh. You just click go and the duck runs for you based on its stats. Okay, I'm really gonna have to stop being so harsh on this game here. It was made by one guy who clearly had an idea, and later games work it out so much better. I'm just making fun of this first one, because it's, you know, it's cute and it's the one I remember playing as a kid. If you want a much better execution of raising a duck though, I'd recommend one of the later games, and if you're watching this after Flash is dead, there's a good few on Steam, just give one of those a go. Though, I'd give the series as a whole a 6 out of 10. Now, what would a video focusing on Flash games be without an entire segment dedicated to Nitro? They're a London-based company which started making Flash games all the way back in 2004. Now they're working on releasing an entire spin-off to Shovel Knight officially with Yacht Club Games. Their games are all meant to be simple with a lot of replay value, the majority of the length coming from how tough some of them are. Also, I currently believe that Nitrom's working on porting the games to a new engine, so they should be safe, but I'm covering them either way in case. Skywire, I'd say, is the best point to start this off on, because I think it was the first one I played as a kid from Nitrom. You control a little cart thing along a wire system from beginning to end, and you only have two options for movement, forward or back. It's really cool where you have to try and time your movements around the stage moving around you, moving tons of well-animated animal-themed obstacles coming at you from every conceivable angle. If you get 3 times, it's back to the beginning. It's simple and it's fun. Also, the music is a banger. I've had it stuck in my head in some way, shape or form since I was 8. Skywire also had such a fantastic art style. There was a spin-off where celebrities are shown as these bean characters and you have to guess what they are. It's cool, and I believe Skywire and its spin-off Skywire VIP are must recommends, an easy 9 out of 10. Off the Rails was a game my brother and I absolutely loved. You have to press the left and right keys on your keyboard for the 2 Cactus brothers to push their end of the device to move forward. The only other button in the game is space to jump. As I said before, these games are meant to be really simple. You just go forward and jump over obstacles, and I had a lot of fun with this one. I remembered how we both sucked at mashing left and right, so one of us would choose a key each and we both mash it. It's a pretty good time. Sure, the game can be a bit harsh, and the fact there's no HP means that you take a hit, you die. But I still enjoyed myself with it, and I'd recommend to you guys if you want to go on Nitro. 7 out of 10. Cave Chaos was another game we absolutely loved for its 2-player co-op. You play as these seriously cute little characters running around a cave. The level is being formed in front of you by bats and only staying around for so long, so you have to be on the move. You just use the arrow key or WSD and it's just a lovely 2D platformer. I love the aesthetic, I love how unsettling the enemies look in contrast to you, and I also just love the idea of a 2-player platformer that makes staying on the move a constant. The amount of platformers where the player is just forced to stay still waiting for the platform to get into position isn't satisfying or fun. Meanwhile here, making the player move quickly through 80 barrels blocking their way, if they get pushed back too far they die. Now that's intense. It's an enjoyable time alone, and if you have a friend over, I'd really recommend local multiplayer on Cave Chaos. It turns into a mess with how you can fuck with each other. It's an easy 8 out of 10. Icebreaker is a pretty cool puzzle game. You need to get these frozen Vikings back to your ship by cleverly cutting them out of the ice around them, create a path. Some levels require you to cut the ice to fill in gaps on the floor so the Viking can go down without getting stuck. And then once on the ship they'll be smashed free. You do this at every Viking in a level and you're done. Really, the blessing and the curse of this game is its simplicity. There's stuff like rope and hinges for you to cut to swing the ice around, but really everything I just described is 90% of the game. It's a fun puzzle game, but it's built entirely around one mechanic, and no matter how satisfying that mechanic is, it can get a bit boring after a while. Still, it gets a 6 out of 10. For a Nitrom puzzle game I can talk a bit more on that I'd recommend more is Rubble Trouble. You play as a demolition crew trying to use different tools to take down a building, from stuff like your standard C4 charges to a helicopter mounted wrecking ball and a tactical airstrike. You know, standard demolition procedure. Every level requires you to blow up enough of the building to earn enough cash to go to the next level, but some levels have more pressing matters. Stores nearby you have to not touch once or they'll crumble to dust, or one of your on-site apprentices gets stuck on top of a skyscraper you're blowing up, so you have to get him down while blowing it up. I love how the explosions look in this game, by the way. The destruction in general just feels and plays very satisfying. My one issue is the levels I mentioned earlier that have buildings you're not meant to hit. I'd much rather take a lump sum of cash away from you as a punishment for damaging them based on how much damage you do, instead of just destroying the whole thing for having a single piece of rubble tickle the building. So if you destroy everything else after that mistake flawlessly, you can still complete it. Either way, it's a good enough time, and I'd give it an 8 out of 10. Cheese Dreams is another pretty wacky platformer. You play as a moon made of cheese being kidnapped by mice, and you try and bounce around to escape. The one issue here is the game is designed around your character being bouncy. Do you guys remember Mario Galaxy when you'd play Spring Mario and the game just sucked? Yeah. It's like that. Plus, to make it even worse, your sides are bouncy too. You hit a wall too hard, you bounce off. It's a good enough game, the graphics are really nice, but the player lacking so much control over yourself, having to time your jumps in a platformer is just, it's weird. I don't like it. I'd give it a 4 out of 10. Square Meal is one of Nitrom's older games. It's a really simple puzzle game. Imagine Kirby without the jumping. You eat these blocks and spit them at enemies to knock them out, then you eat the enemy. You do this to everything on the screen and you win. I could never really get far in this game because there's a 2-player co-op mode my brother and I would play, so we wouldn't care for the game, we'd just try and fuck each other over as much as possible because you can hurt and kill one another. Really, there isn't much else to talk about, everything I've described is the entire game. Different blocks have some different properties like wood breaking apart and rubber bouncing, and some enemies have a shield so you need to hit them from behind. But really, it's simple and that's its blessing and it's cursed. It's a good enough time though. Same as Icebreaker, 5 out of 10. Pest Control, oh yeah, now this is a quality Nitrome game. A mouse-only game which is a collection of little arcade games. You control a little bug swatter and have to swat insects in a variety of ways to beat the level. These range from swatting really small, really hard-to-hit mosquitoes to juggling snails for a certain amount of time and big bosses against
the giant enemy spider.
Really, the only flaw I have against this is around the third world you get a huge spike in difficulty, but that's it, that's its only downside. I love the look to the game, the sound effects are well done, the artwork is fantastic. I just have a great time playing this game and swatting down bugs. This game is something I have to recommend to you guys. It's just a point and click mini game selection, but when they're this fun, it's hard not to recommend. I know this is a short segment, but there's not really much else to say. 10 out of 10. Parasite is a quality 2D platformer by Nitrome. You control the titular Parasite, some weird alien squid thing on a quest to conquer the planet for yourself. To beat the game you have to get to the end of the level and hop into your steampunk taxi spaceship thing. What if there's something in your way? You're a really frail alien, you know, so as long as it's not water, there's a way around it. You can jump on top of a cat moth or one of these huge boys and violently take them over. Make them serve their purpose for you, and once you're done you just blow them up. You can even do this to kill an enemy, just jump on and blow them up. Just make sure you hit the head dead on or else you will die from contact. It's a pretty well made platformer, the controls are responsive, and the gameplay is somehow one of Nitrome's more complicated games. You move with the arrows and you press Z, and that's really it. The music is alright, I love the ideas that this game does, I just think it's missing something to make me give it more than a 9 out of 10. Okay, so after such a roll Nitrome's been on, what's next? Rainbow Geddon is a game that I can simply describe as Pac-Man with some shit add-ons, like that's all the gameplay is. You go around the stage eating pellets as a strange white blob thing, and every now and then a random power-up will drop. If you pick up multiple of the same power-up it becomes stronger. You can get the bomb from Bomberman, which I think is cool. It also blows up a chunk of the stage, leaving pellets to pick up, a bubble to block enemies and their projectiles, and a drill to get through the level. It's a fun spin on Pac-Man in all honesty, but that doesn't take away from it being just that, a bit too similar from something else. Plus, I'm really not the biggest fan of the art. The music's alright though, I'd give it a 4.5 out of 10. Snowdrift is another one of Nitrome's 2D platform selection, and one of its weaker options in my opinion. You're some Yeti out to get fish and chips and you run into some obstacles on the way. The whole game is a perpetual ice level with the trademarked overly slippy controls. For playing as a Yeti you'd think he'd be used to this, but no, you'll still slip here, there and everywhere while playing. But these controls are central to the game's main mechanic and the only way to kill enemies. Drifting. If you're running across snow and you activate drifting, you can't really choose where you go, you'll just drift along the snow knocking away anything you run into. This is your only way of really fighting anything, so it means if something shoots a penguin at you from head on, you need to jump over the shot, get a running start again, and then drift into him before he shoots. Honestly, I just wish that you could jump on an enemy's head to take them out as well, it'd make things so much simpler. It's a fine game, the graphics are nice, but the music is an absolute banger. I love the idea of momentum-based combat in a platformer, but I don't think this game pulled it off well enough. I'm giving it a 6 out of 10. Twang just sucks. It's a weird platformer where your objective is to get a ball from start to finish, and you stretch the stage out around it to bounce it, but it's really nothing more than that. I don't know why. The momentum and movement just feels so weird, and the bouncing is so inconsistent. Just to clear a gap feels like an absolute dice roll. You try to get the angle so you'll be launched forward? Nah, no height. You get the angle for the height? No distance. I tried it for 10 minutes and I just gave up after it bounced me backwards. But I can see how it would be fun, but it's just not my thing at all and it barely works. Sorry. I'm giving this one a fat 3 out of 10. Nanobots is what I'd imagine someone missing feelings of sympathy would think is a fun bullet hell game. Okay, yeah, so imagine you're playing a bullet hell game, but only certain weapons can damage specific enemies. So you need to use this awkward wrecking ball thing and dropping time mines in order to progress. Like, nah man. You don't see a Toho game where you need to use mines to kill the enemies. Who cares if you're just shooting projectiles in a straight line? Like, the shooting aspect of a bullet hell game does not matter. Don't get me wrong, I'm being harsh here, like everything else in the game is nice. The art is competent, but the game part of this game is flawed from the beginning. This is one thing I will always give Flash though. The idea of providing a safe training ground to put ideas for a game out there so you can better judge what does and doesn't work in the game. Though Nanobots, I'm giving it a 2 out of 10. Mutant is a game similar to Shell Shock and Worms, but this time you play as little pirate toys, and instead of moving them around the stage normally you have to throw them like projectiles. It's an odd and pretty flawed little game, but it's also quite fun. First off, the good. The weapons you have access to are a ton of fun, and the charming character designs and enemy dialogue is quite good. But moving your characters around as a projectile is a nightmare. I don't know what it is, but it feels like how far you can send them is just way too stumpy, so moving anywhere on a turn is going to get you nowhere. It feels as though to make up for this, you choose who attacks each turn, so that goes for it, but having one guy in a good spot to attack and choosing him every turn isn't very fun either, especially because if he dies, you're now stuck with someone else. The projectiles themselves, and some bugs like fire not touching enemies on the edge of a stage and enemies never falling off. By the end, it's a fun enough game held down by some flaws in the gameplay. There's also a 2-player versus mode which I think is a lot more fun than the main game. So I'd give the 2-player mode a 7 out of 10 but the main game a 6 out of 10. One key is as it says on the tin. This cute little character will walk in a straight line and it's up to you to use your spacebar and nothing else to get him around the stage. You remember those levels in Crash to Insanity where you have to move the stage around Cortex while he runs in a line? Imagine that, but it's just one button in a whole game. I like it. When enemies approaching, you just hit space to deactivate him for a bit. If there's a big enemy you can't deactivate, a spring will get him out of the way. It's a cool game, but the whole gimmick can get old over time, which is one thing that drags it down. So in the end, I'm giving Wonky a 7 out of 10. Graveyard Shift is your classic arcade on-rails shooter. You're moving through the level automatically and it's up to you to blast zombies to hell. It's a simple game and it's the only zombie game I can think of where a body shot is a more reliable killing blow than a headshot. Enemies will also sometimes shoot at you, so you need to block by turning your mouse into a shield. But if your shield gets hit too much, it'll be worn away, so you need to get health kits for it. The game is alright, you click on zombies and they die, but then you have some issues that come up, like having to protect women from zombies. The zombies can literally spawn on top of them and kill them instantly, taking away from your health. Nothing that lost me a run, just a general nuisance. Graveyard Shift, it's okay, nothing I can knock it too much for. Presentation and music is pretty good and the gameplay is simple. It just lacks that something new original to give it a kick. I'd give it a 5 out of 10. Worm food also isn't very good. You control a big worm and jump out to eat people, go down, build up momentum and get some kills. It's very much similar to the Miami Shark series. One difference though, in Miami Shark you feel like you're in control of the shark in question. Here, not at all. You feel like you're in semi-molten butter trying to worm yourself around a world of black ice. You have such a weird turning circle for a game with the only controls being forward, left and right, and in general the gameplay itself isn't nearly as satisfying. Hitting the ant people you need to win a level feels more like gambling than anything. It's a 3 out of 10, I would not recommend Worm Food. On the hand of actually good Nitro games, there's the Test Subject series, simple puzzle platformers with controls as simple as the first Mega Man. You run, you jump, you shoot, but these games have a whole new mechanic introduced from the very first level that adds an entire level to the gameplay. Two-sided portal walls used all over the stages. You can shoot into them to catch an enemy off guard or use them in platforming, but the enemies can use them too. Plus there are some really cool puzzle levels where you just have to find the right wall to go through to reach the end. The one issue here is that sometimes the controls can feel a bit slippy and precision platforming isn't very reliable. Plus the gun you have feels very weak while grounded, but in the air you can spam it. There was also a 2-player spin-off based on the game where you and a second person can fight in a 1v1 arena. I loved this one with my brother as a kid and I love the Test Subject games now. 9 out of 10. Nothing really new or groundbreaking, but it does everything it wants to competently. The controls can be a bit awkward however. Twin Shot is a 1 to 2 player action platformer with a ton of great ideas and execution I'd love to see in a full retail game. You play as one of these very cute boys with a bow and arrow, and now I'll go over the aspects of the game I love. The first aspect being the aesthetic given to everything. It's all just so pleasant to look at. I love the designs of the enemies, the player characters, the environment, everything just looks awesome. Next, areas off screen are Pac-Man walls. You fall off the stage, you just fall down from the top. You go off the side, you come out the left side. It's just such a fun idea that gives the player so much creativity. If there's an enemy at the top giving you trouble, you just jump off the stage and get to him faster. Then finally, your arrows can be used as platforms to stand on. These two gameplay aspects I loved. Twin Shot gives players so much creativity and freedom in how they get around levels provided to deal with the enemies. I'd easily say that this is one of my favourite Nitro titles and gets a 10 out of 10. It's such a great point to round out this segment on, and it's something I'd love to see remade fully. Well, I mean, after a huge segment like that, I'm struggling to think of a point where I'd be satisfied on ending the video off on. I really can't think of anything in particular I'd be comfortable with doing so. I was thinking this and I went back to JMTBO2's library and found this very unpopular game which for some reason deeply moved me while playing. Run Elephant Run. You play as the same elephant from the first game in this video, but this time you're running away from your obligations to go home to Africa and see your wife. And there was something about it all, how simply it was put together, the tiny window the game could run in. It made me think of all the heart in every Flash game. There were no indie devs going huge and making millions at this point. All of these game devs online were just making games with the passion and heart to do so, working on these silly passion projects on the side of a full-time job. I'll always remember Flash, the browser plugin from the early days of the internet that allowed all this to happen and really shaped not only my childhood, but I'd assume many people out there today. The process of this video has been a nostalgic walk down memory lane, and scripting this has been a nightmare. I get 3/4 through and then remember another game to do, and even as I write this down there are 4 or 5 more games coming to my mind that I didn't get to bring up. So please, I implore you, get out there and play as much as you can if you remember them before they're gone for good. And for serving the internet as well as it has over its lifespan, I'd like to dedicate this video as my tribute to Flash, and I can guarantee you it will be missed. That's all for now guys, take care.